To get started, it is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, and we are getting ready to begin our special meeting. This special meeting is regarding our city's facilities planning update, and so I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. It is 3 o'clock, and Madam Clerk, if you would, please call roll.
Councilmember Dynas.
Here.
Councilmember Estrada.
Here.
Councilmember Sobek.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Carwin.
Here.
And Mayor Zimmerman.
And I'm here, and if we can stand for the flag salute, and we'll have our Chief Pat Walsh lead us, please. All right, thank you, Chief. We are going to go ahead and get started, and I will turn it over to Ms. Rebecca Kramer to introduce the team.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council, as well as our public that are joining us here in person or via Menifee TV. My name is Rebecca Kramer. I'm the assistant to the City Manager in the City Executive Office, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Facilities Planning Workshop today, in which we're going to be discussing the feasibility and readiness of the city's largest 3 facilities projects. That includes our future City Hall, the Police Department headquarters, as well as our Public Works Maintenance Operations Center, often referred to as the MOC. As part of today's workshop, we'll be reviewing our existing lease terms, projected construction costs for those facilities, available resources, and project sequencing. So I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome and introduce Michael Bush and Brandon Kofrey from Urban Futures, who we have engaged to assist us in the development of our public financing plan, and who will be leading today's discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Bush. And if we could have the presentation pulled up, thank you.
All right, welcome, Mr. Bush.
Thank you. Give you a little introduction for Brandon and myself. Brandon will help me present today. I'm going to take the first section, then Brandon will follow me. Feel free to ask questions as we go. I think that might be easier for you and as well as us to make sure we get everything answered. A little bit about myself and Mr. Kafori. We both worked in the public finance industry for quite a while. I've passed my 25th year now in 26 years, was in local government for about half of that time in a very similar role to Rochelle, your assistant city manager. I started in finance, then came into the assistant city manager's office. I managed the firm's day-to-day operations, lots of experience with issuance of debt. My real focus here, however, is I've got some fairly unique experience that's similar to yours. I was part of the incorporation team for Hoopa Valley, so I know what it's like to start with nothing, to have the state take away your money the day that you incorporate and have to start over. We were in a strip mall when I first moved into City Hall, right next to a pizza place. So I smelled pizza all day long. Interesting enough, I just left Eastvale, and I sat in the finance director's office there. Literally, it was this big. And we're going to talk a little bit about our work with them and some others as well. So I've got some interesting experience with incorporation and with unique issues that municipalities go through. Mr. Kafori is joining me today. He has a background in public finance, but also as a banker for municipal securities. So that experience helps us kind of work together to look at your engagement specifically. A little bit more about us. So when I left public service and joined the firm, I was offered to buy the firm, which I did do. I restructured the firm around the idea of what services municipalities need in the finance area that they don't have in-house, mostly small and medium-sized cities like yourself. So we structured the firm around expertise in different areas that we thought would be useful to municipalities. So these are basically the divisional functions of what we have. There's a compliance group that basically does all the reporting that are required for public agencies. Not a big issue for you here, but where most of our services come in is advisory work and our consulting service. So we've prepared a model that we've turned over to your staff. You've probably seen it. The financial model, the 10-year, 20-year models that we developed. So that's something that we do for a lot of our clients. I think we've started that process here with you. That's the basis of where we start from. understanding financial feasibility before we jump ahead into actual planning and so forth. So we've done that work here, doing a lot of other places. Then we start getting into the structuring issues with unique opportunities such as the public facilities that we're going to be talking about today. Firm's been around since 1972, started off as a redevelopment firm, so done a lot of planning work, and then migrated into specifically and only public finance about 20 years ago. We are a large firm by number of staff. I think we might be the largest financial advisor firm by staff in the state of California. We have about 20 total staff. That's relatively large for a firm of our size and in the state specifically and only in California. As a result, we do more transactions than everyone else. You can see the totals up here pretty much double a lot of the others that we will compete with. And as you can see with the check boxes, these are the people that I've hired to kind of round out the team. We have practical experience, people that have run cities, convinced a public law attorney to become a advisor. He actually prepares a lot of our forecast work. Pretty unique to get an attorney to do that, but he does a great job at it. We've got finance directors that have served in public agencies, investment bankers, rating analysis, and people that have only been financial advisors. So very well staff services, but comprehensive. So any problem, any issues that our clients face, we typically are able to deal with them in-house and have some level of experience, even though that experience may require some unique qualifications. We usually have it. What I think might be of topic for us tonight is the experience that we have specifically in Riverside County and the projects we're working on within the county. As I mentioned, I was part of the Harupa Valley Incorporation team. As part of that, we started off in a strip mall, then we ended up buying a boot barn and kind of converting that into a city hall. Worked, but certainly wouldn't work long term. And I'm sure they'll have some plans later on what to do. But the cities of Beaumont, working on a new police station for them. City of San Jacinto, new city hall for them currently. Just finished the Desert Hot Springs City Hall. They were working out of trailers for about 15 years. They're finally in a permanent facility. I mentioned Eastvale. Eastvale is incorporated similar to the time that you are. They're looking at a police station and city hall. We are in a similar process with them as where we are with you today. We've been assisting the city of Lake Elsinore. They've just financed an extension or expansion of their existing city hall on Main Street. And then we've done some public financing work for the city of Coachella for a library project. So all these things kind of give us some unique experience to having our ability to talk with you today. And there's even more unique experiences with you that we'll cover as we go through the slide presentation. So a little bit about your facility. Some of this stuff, obviously, what we've done here is this is just to kind of set up the next phase of our presentation, which really focuses more on readiness and feasibility. But as you know, you have leased facilities that you're using for City Hall, for your IT facility, and the police headquarters. I remember years ago going into your current police station when it was your City Hall. Done some work for you in the past and started there. And you made a small spot work. Congratulations on making it work for a police station. It's pretty incredible to be able to pull that off. In this place, you've done a great job. But this lease, as you know, is running out, and it's an opportunity, I think, to explore other options, whether it be this facility or something new. I think you got a little bit more time with your other facilities that are mentioned above. One, you own the public workstation, but you've put quite a bit of money forward as an investment into the expansion of your police department with the acquisition of the Bank of America building. So timing-wise, we think the focus is on City Hall, and we'll go through some specific slides on why we believe that to be the case. But we understand that the plan of the city and of the city council ultimately is to try and bring all three of these to fruition. So we have looked at the existing leases and with the assistance of your staff, developed this slide here that basically kind of goes through what we think the current costs are and what we think the maximum costs are. And you'll see there's some footnotes that we've made some calculations. But we have noticed with your City Hall lease, it's a pretty steep climb from where you are. Great deal when it was probably signed, but it starts to accelerate, and at some point it gets to be a pretty expensive lease process down the road. Great deals on the other facilities, certainly not as aggressive growth, but certainly growth in lease costs. And ultimately what cities get to is they start to mature, and you're going through that process when you incorporate It's very expensive to incorporate a city and to develop it. I view this as part of your maturity process, and the decision you make on these facilities, it's probably the biggest decision the city's gonna make for the next 50 or 100 years. I mean, you build one city hall, it lasts a long time. You build one police station, it lasts a long time. So these are very important decisions, and they're very costly decisions to mature and to have a sense of place and a sense of community. But I think this is the appropriate process to go through, is to vet it out, to understand it, to look at your opportunities in the current marketplace, and to look at your facility here. Your city, like some of the others, is growing really fast. Eastvale is pretty much built out. You guys have a long way to go, and so you need more facilities. It's our understanding that you're pretty much at the limit here with this facility, and you're looking for some more space to serve the community, larger council chamber, certainly the ability to add and enhance services as you grow the community further.
Mr. Bush,
Yep.
let me just ask you, do you prefer us to hold our questions to the end? Or all right, so
Anytime, Mayor.
Councilman Estrada pushed his request button.
Hey, Mr. Bush, thanks for being here. I saw in our lease expires 2029 and projected lease payment. That's your projection of what the market would dictate the lease of this would be?
That is your current lease rate, just expanded out. No, not without negotiating with the leaseholder or leasee. So it's just an assumption we made that if all things continued, that would be your cost. That's your current acceleration rate of your existing lease through 2029.
Okay, so it will get to this point.
Unless you would go negotiate something differently, but that's our assumption.
Okay, thank you.
So we in working with your staff, we understand that there's been some work completed, assessment of need, and some early estimates. And I want to point out, these are estimates. Certainly not a number that we would expect you to use today necessarily as a decision point. You know, when I was in public government, I actually had the pleasure, it was fun actually, to work on new projects. I've done city halls, senior centers, and other facilities in different communities. The estimates are never the number that comes out. There's a process you'll go through design, where they'll come up with some design estimates, and then once your design estimate's done, you typically go through something called value engineering, where they'll try to refine that cost. But ultimately, it's been my experience, it comes back to what you're willing to pay, what your affordability is. So we're using the estimate, and what you'll see in our slides are we're using the estimate numbers throughout the presentation for consistency, but certainly not assuming that this is going to be the final cost or should be the cost as you go forward. It could be higher, could be lower, but I think as you go through the next phase of your project, that will be further vetted out. I can tell you, however, in communicating with the other agencies we're working with, your estimates are in line with theirs across the board. Almost everywhere, the square footage costs are about the same. There's a few exceptions. I can speak offhand. There's one project up north, a northern California city. Somehow they're $1,500 a square foot, which is kind of high. You're not anywhere near that. Then we've got another one, I think, down in San Diego for police stations, pretty high. But the rest of them for facilities like you're considering, all in the same ballpark as what you have estimated here. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Kafori, and I'll be here to answer any questions with him. He's going to go through project readiness and feasibility. We really think this is the meat of the presentation, going through these next few slides. So I encourage you, if you have questions, to stop us along the way. We think this is where much of the dialogue will take place tonight.
Thank you. Whoever did that, thank you. Good welcome. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, staff, and members of the public. My name's Brandon Kafori. I'm with Urban Futures, as Michael indicated. I've been with the firm about 4 years now, and specifically have been supporting this project going back to last year, assisting with a lot of the analysis and sort of execution analytics associated with it. So I'm going to spend a couple slides here talking about the project readiness, feasibility, and go through a brief analysis that we did to just touch on some of the points that Michael made regarding why, in our assessment, we really believe that prioritizing City Hall makes the most sense at this point. So in terms of project readiness, there's three main points here I'd like to touch on. The first is that there are committed funds already committed for this project, in addition to development impact fees. There's $4.75 million that's currently committed for the City Hall project. And in our assessment, this would be sufficient for the first phase of pre-design work, the phase that you would go through, as Michael talked about, before you get to construction. So doing the schematic work, project schedule, project budgets, all of that can get the city through that first point. There's a civic center parking lot project, I believe it's in the CIP budget that's proposed for tonight, that's going to begin construction in summer of 2023. So in our assessment, again, just seems to make sense to prioritize the City Hall to be more concurrent with that phase of the project. And lastly, going forward with this first design phase doesn't necessarily commit the city to construction. It's sort of a first step, if you will, in that process. And again, I'll talk more about why we think right now is an opportune time to begin that. And it's not on this slide, but we also want to just acknowledge all of the work that's gone into getting to this point tonight by staff, city council. I think going back to the fact that the city sent out an RFP and engaged a municipal advisor last year specifically for this project sort of speaks to the readiness and position that the city's in at this point to go forward. So on this next slide, I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking about this analysis that we did here specific to the City Hall lease. And essentially, this is looking at the lease economics and opportunity costs. So I think, just to frame this discussion, if you will, it's very akin to rent versus owning. We've all looked at that when potentially purchasing a home. It's sort of a similar analysis along that line. As Michael talked about, the city is currently leasing facilities that we're in right now, as well as the IT facilities. It's about 26,000 square feet. The payment right now is at about $722,000 for City Hall, relatively low, but it's going up over 13% a year and has since 2009. So that, as we're going to show, escalates very quickly as we get out to some of the out years. So if I could direct your attention to the graph on the right, essentially we modeled out three key data points, okay? So the first is that current lease, the blue line. What is the city's current obligation and how does it change over time? So you see that there on the bottom. The current lease terminates in 2029, and after which point the city would have an option to renew. So again, you can see that it's at slightly below $800,000 for the IT facility and City Hall currently, but goes up at a relatively quick rate. And by year 15, it would cross what would be the potential financing payment. So let me talk about that line next. So the green line is essentially our estimation of what it would cost to finance a facility based on the costs that we showed earlier, and assuming this entire cost is financed at today's rates for a 30-year term. I would characterize this estimate as conservative. We thought it was appropriate for this purpose to approach it that way, given where we are in the process, and the fact that those numbers will be determined as you get the construction budget and by the market rates at the time. So that rate there is about $4.3 million, and we've drawn that across the graph. The third line is, I think, most compelling. So the proposed facility is 65,000 square feet, and we thought, as an apples-to-apples comparison, how could we compare that to what it would cost to lease that space? So that's essentially what we've drawn out here in the orange line. So taking the square footage cost of this building and the IT facility, we multiplied that times the new square footage and assumed the same growth rate at that 13%, which we certainly understand is an assumption that one could renegotiate in the future, but it's what the city's seen in its recent lease, and we understand that office space in Menifee is currently at a premium in this market. So that's compelling because in just 8 years, it actually crosses the financing payment that we modeled out. And from there, it goes up even further and at a compounding rate. So by year 15, we're crossing 10 million. So again, this is sort of a hypothetical example, but it's meant to sort of accentuate the point we're trying to make here, which is that now is presenting a good opportunity to start this process while the city is in the current lease and get out in front of the renewal process. At that point, the city would sort of be subject to market rents at the time and would, I'll use the word expose the city to some risk in terms of what those prices would be. And it would sort of create some budget certainty to lock in a financing payment as of today. So I'm going to move along.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Does the financing cost, the green line, does that include construction?
Yes.
Or is that just purchasing of the facility?
No, that's the cost to build the facility and finance it.
I want to add one thing. Sorry, Brandon. That assumes that there's no cash
Right.
from the city's reserves. That's 100% financing. So when he says conservative, I think that's really what he's pointing out to, that it's our understanding the city would likely put some cash into this deal. So that number would come down from that line lower, which obviously would meet those other dotted lines a little closer in. Sorry.
The other thing that would be assumed here in the orange line is if there was such a thing as a 65,000 square foot building
Right.
that's available
Exactly.
out there.
Essential service.
Right.
Great. So I've got a couple more slides here to present. The first is the project feasibility building cost index. What we've shown here is a cost index that's specific to buildings in the cost of constructing buildings in California. This is a data set that's put out by the Engineering News Record, and it sort of takes into account labor and materials for a standard building project in the state. So it's no surprise, given what's been going on with inflation and we've all opened a newspaper that it's going back to 2021, there's been a substantial increase in that rate. Prior to that, it was, at the 1% up to the little over 3% range. And then we saw that spike in 21 with the inflation and supply chain issues that have happened. It's subsided a bit, but cumulatively over the past 5 years, this has gone up 44%. And it's sort of the story we're seeing with a lot of our issuer clients that time isn't on your side. If you're trying to build a project, in today's dollars, the trend has been that tomorrow and the next day it will be higher. So we will deal with this more specifically once the city has the specific design in place and when we get closer to construction. Of course, there's a chance that, depending on the economic environment, cost of commodities and the labor market, that this could come down. But again, it's the recent trend we've seen specific to this market. And as I'll show on the next page, it's sort of shown itself in a lot of these similar projects we've been assisting with for our city clients. So these are recent comparable projects. Mike had shown on an earlier slide that we are currently engaged by a number of cities across the state to assist them with public facilities projects. Many of them are listed here. The others that are shown are comparable data that we've put together and had a running list that we've worked on with staff just to sort of gauge how these costs have tracked over time and across different project types. So on the top gray area, we have City Hall and Civic Center facilities. And going back to 2005, 2008, there was one data point we were able to find for Marietta that had built a City Hall. And you'll notice there the cost per square foot was at $426. Over time, that's gone up. Again, Temecula built one soon after that, in sort of a recessionary period where costs were somewhat driven down at $477 a square foot. And from there, as we shown on the prior slide, it's only gone up. And the dollars we're talking about today, we're commonly seeing this $1,000 a square foot number. That's the current budget in Eastvale. We're working with them right now, as Mike had mentioned. We also have some data points for police facilities. Most of these are more recent. So you don't see the, the longer trend line get drawn out. But I think the interesting thing here is that, the sort of the variance in the different square footages, I think sort of speaks to the, the fact that these are unique facilities and not necessarily sort of standardized as an office space, right? They have different needs, and that's why you see a range from, something as low as $625 all the way up to $2,300 a square foot for one of the facilities. Just to wrap up here before I turn it back over to the city, this is essentially a picture or a graph of the prior slide. We just like to show it graphically. I think it helps tell the story of what's gone on with costs going back over the past 15 years. And we've shown here the Civic Center and City Hall projects that I just referred to, and again, how we've gotten to this point today of $1,000 square foot costs. So with that, unless there are questions, I'd like to turn it back over to Rebecca, but I'm happy to answer any questions at this stage.
Council members, we have questions for Mr. Kafori.
I have one
Go ahead.
question. So, are we still experiencing an anomaly in the market? Do you think it's going to change and level out in a better way?
In terms of
I mean,
inflation,
nobody
or
has a crystal ball, right?
yeah, I certainly don't. But in terms of inflation, or in terms of the market, like bond markets, or
The inflation there that you were showing.
sure. I mean, again, I would be careful in terms of making any predictions. But as you know, this has been in the news for a couple of years with Fed policy, and the whole goal with raising interest rates is to clamp that down to a more normalized level. It's certainly something that the city could benefit from if the costs did go down. But, I mean, I think from the recent trend, you're seeing we're not at 13% anymore, right? So it's come down a bit. And one would hope that with higher rates, in a year from now, it could become a more normal rate.
Okay, so thank you. And you mentioned, we have some money set aside, and that would cover the design. Just say that the market goes in a direction where we decide to make a decision to maybe have to hold off on that design. How long is that design good for?
You want to answer
If
that
it
one?
had to sit
Yeah.
on the shelf?
Well, your schematic designs will be good. Those are basically the systems within your design facility. The estimates, however, that come with that would probably be where you would see revisions itself.
Okay, so once the design is incorporated, and that it could sit there until we're ready to use it.
It could,
Okay.
yep. I think one other aspect too, once that initial design work is done, most public agencies, and I'm sure your engineering staff are very familiar with having a value engineering process. Well, that value engineering process will go and look at the systems themselves, but also look at material choices, which you will all probably be a part of that discussion process to see if there are alternatives to that really control the cost. So my assumption is you'll get one design cost, and then you'll go through value engineering that typically will lower that cost a little bit.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think we can proceed ahead.
All right, so we wanted to close today's workshop with a discussion about project sequencing and next steps, which is our focus for today. As you know very well, since our incorporation in 2008, the city of Menifee's population has grown by 70%. We're currently the fourth fastest growing city in California, and we have a population of well over 110,000 residents currently, and we expect that number to increase to 150,000 residents by 2045, if not sooner. To keep pace with our population growth and continue to enhance municipal services, we of course established our police department in July of 2020, and we have significantly increased personnel serving the community in all departments. And knowing that our existing facilities are at or very near capacity, it's really important that we develop a plan that will carry us well into the future in terms of facility space to serve our community. So as we look at project sequencing, Each of these projects, without question, are going to require significant investments in terms of both human and financial capital. And knowing that we do not have the capacity to initiate all three projects simultaneously, staff are recommending, as has been mentioned, that consideration be given to beginning with the City Hall project and then initiating the design for our police department headquarters, as well as the Public Works Maintenance and Operations Center, both of which we anticipate at this time would be located on the same property during the latter phase of the City Hall construction. As been mentioned previously in the presentation, there are a number of reasons for this recommendation. Of course, that begins with our current lease terms. The existing 10-year lease on the City Hall property will end earlier than that of our police department leases. And of course, the annual cost increases for the police station are occurring at a much slower pace than the City Hall property. We also want to have time to realize and maximize the investment that's been made in the police station at present, which we invested about $2.1 million with the establishment of our police department to serve their needs. And so the longer that we're able to be in that facility, the greater return on investment. And of course, we've acquired our Bank of America building, which will allow for some level of service expansion. That facility will be serving as our police substation into the future. We've also made some investments, just over $600,000 in our Public Works Maintenance and Operations Center, which we own, to enable us to continue to operate those services out of that facility in the near term until we're able to move forward with those projects. And then, of course, we have our parking lot for the future City Hall that will be serving both the future City Hall as well as our Central Park that's in design and will be in construction this summer. And then we have the $4.75 million that has been set aside specifically for the City Hall project that enables us to move forward with that first phase, that pre-development and design phase of the project. So in terms of next steps, what we're looking for today is your input and direction in terms of project sequencing, in particular the moving forward or initiation of the City Hall project as a first step. And then based upon the direction that we received today, staff anticipates returning to you in the fall, them and the like. And then based upon that selected delivery method, staff would proceed with an RFP or RFQ process and then bring back a contract for award consideration sometime in the spring of 2024. So that concludes our overview today. We'd welcome any additional questions you have and open the time for discussion.
All right, Ms. Kramer, can we go back to the slide previous, the sequencing one? One more. So council members, looking at the sequencing, do we concur that this timing and prioritizing makes sense to all of us? Is that yes? Okay.
Are you saying
Starting
the
with
order?
City Hall, yeah, the order. That's the sequencing. First step, we focus on City Hall, and then we come in after that, looking at police headquarters, maintenance and ops, all those things.
One thing I did not hear is the projected growth of the police department compared to the projected growth of city services. So which one is going to, I know City Hall right now is maxed out on space, and I don't know if the police department is. I kind of think they are also. So which one is worse off not having a new facility?
So the reason that we're recommending this approach is because we did add some capacity with the acquisition of the Bank of America building, that it gives us some level of service expansion because that police substation allows us to relieve that pressure, if you will, for police services. There's no question that we need a police station as well, and that we also need that Public Works Maintenance Operations Center that serves for fleet services, supports the police department. Those are absolutely needed facilities, but just in terms of timing and why we're recommending moving forward with City Hall first is all those factors that we'd mentioned, and then we did add that capacity to relieve some of that pressure for our police department in the interim.
So if I understand you, the Bank of America building has that been finalized? Is escrow closed on that? Okay, so we've got it. That's going to take care of the immediate needs for the police department, but we don't have an equivalent facility for the City Hall immediate needs.
That's correct.
Which is why that facility is prioritized over police department.
Yes.
We don't want like 1,500 square feet of office space at various places all over the city.
Right.
Got it.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Carwin, do you concur with the proposed sequencing?
I do.
All right, very good. Sounds like we have a sense of the council. We're on board together with staff's recommendations, so thank you for that. Is there any other direction that you would like from council on this?
Not at this time. We'll be returning in the fall with more information. So
All right,
thank you for your time.
I do have Councilman Dynas in the queue, and I did have one more little short thing to mention, but we'll start with Councilman Dynas.
Thank you. I know this is the easy part, just prioritizing. The real work comes in I guess, September thereabout, when you bring back, asking to open the wallet up. What would be helpful, I guess, a number of questions that I will be pondering when that comes is, you have 4.3 million debt service assumed. I'm going to take that as current market and tax exempt financing. So I guess the question is, what has it been historically, the tax exempt market been before the pandemic? And because right now we're in a high interest rate mode. So of course, one of the discussions we need to have is the fact that, would it be better to wait for a better interest rate environment and a better construction environment? So the question to staff then would be, how long can we feasibly stay here and wait for the economy to cool off a little bit? I think we need to understand that prior to making any kind of decision to go forward. And I think second of all is a really good education and training on what a leaseback is, what tax revenue bonds and all that kind of stuff is, because this is a big decision. $59 million, I don't think anyone spent that much money lately. So it's kind of new for us. So those are the kind of questions I'll be looking at, that a serious consideration of, is it the proper time to do it? And, is there a better way to get better costs for it if we waited 6 months or something like that? So I hope those would be added into the next presentation. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that one of the takeaways that I got from our folks at Urban Futures is that, it's in our best interest to move sooner. It seems like the more we wait, the more the escalating cost is. We see that with our schools. I serve on RCTC, and even though materials cost jumped way up during the pandemic, it still was in our best interest to move forward with some of the billion-dollar projects there, as opposed to waiting, because it's anticipated, if you just look at it historically, we'd be spending a lot more if we tried to wait for the economy to cool down and for materials and products to come down in price. So anyway, I'm on board. I'm also looking forward, as Councilman Dynas mentioned, to the different delivery options that we have available to us, and if there's opportunities for savings there in both the cost to construct as well as cost to finance. So those are things that could be different if we look at various different ways of delivering this, if we build it ourselves or have someone build it with us as a partnership. So anyway, I'm excited to see those things come to us in the fall. So thank you. Anybody else have anything else to share? All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually, do we have anyone here from the public that wishes to speak on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.